All right, hello everybody. It's been a while. I've got a live session planned for right now, and what I would like to talk about is why we resonate with certain things, even though they're not really literally in our chart. This was supposed to be a pop-out chat, but it's not working. So I'll check the chats every now and then to see if I can answer some questions that you have. But I want to explain this topic to you, first of all. What do I mean by resonate? People use this word all the time. Resonate. I think it means, it's when somebody says something and you're like, yes, then that thing resonates with you. It makes you vibe. It vibes with you. It jives with you, whatever, something like that. Resonate means yeah. So why is it that sometimes you resonate with something, but it's not in your chart? Like sometimes people say, well, I really resonate with Jyeshta Nakshatra, but I don't have any Jyeshta Nakshatra. So I want to explore that a little bit today because it's very important. First of all, it's very interesting. And then also it's very important because the way people deal with the situation where they resonate something with, which is not in their chart, is usually they change their chart. Or they look for a system or a technique or a theory which would make that thing be in their chart. But that ain't the greatest way to do it. So let me, oh my God. Also, the mic is working, isn't it? You can hear me. But actually this mic is off. So it must mean that I am not even recording, like I'm not even giving you the good sound. But who cares? We're already rolling, right? So let me just confirm that you guys can hear me. Looks like you guys can hear me, right? Low volume. Well, crank up your volume because if I try to like set this up now, it's probably going to screw something else up. All right. Let me just try this, see if this works. Checky check. Check. You're still on the regular mic. So anyway, sorry about that. So here is my short answer to why you resonate with things that are not in your chart. You ready? Here's the short, sweet, simple answer. The answer is that you don't understand your chart. So simple. And let me give you some examples of that. Some practical examples. Like let's say, hang on, let me just take care of all this computer stuff. Like let's say, I'll give you an example first with the sunset. So my basic answer is, look, buddy, the reason why this thing resonates with you, even though it's not in your chart, is because you don't really understand your chart well enough. Okay? So it's not that you have to change your chart, but you have to understand your chart. Now, to give you a concrete example, let's start with the simplest situation. Let's just start with the sun sign. And let's say I come up to you and I say, supposedly I was born July 27th, so I'm a Leo, but I resonate a lot more with what Virgo is all about. Because like I like to be patient and methodical and careful about things. So I don't know, maybe astrology is wrong, or maybe oh, you know what? There's this system where I could put, this guy said that we should have 13 constellations, and if I use that system, then I am a Virgo. So see, that system must be great because I really resonate with being a Virgo, and that system lets me be a Virgo. Well, okay, great. So now you just adopted some weird system just because you feel like a Virgo. But actually, maybe your rising sign is a Virgo. Maybe you don't realize that you're only talking about the sun, and there's way more to a chart than just your sun sign. Maybe you have plenty of Virgo. Maybe you have 13 planets in Virgo. Maybe you have a moon in Virgo. Maybe, right? But all you know about your chart is that your sun is in Leo. Now, that's a really simple example, but do you get the basic point? The reason why you resonate with things that are not in your chart is because you don't really know what's in your chart. You don't know your chart well enough. So this person is resonating with Virgo, thinking I'm a Leo, but they don't realize they have 50 things in Virgo. Or it can get more complicated than that. That's very simple. That's a very simple situation where the person just doesn't realize that there's more to astrology than the sun sign. But how about this? Like, I resonated as a Virgo. Like, in other words, like, Virgo really makes sense to me. I really feel like a Virgo, but my sun's not in Virgo, my ascendant is not in Virgo, my moon is not in Virgo. But your moon is in Gemini with Saturn. And your ascendant is like Taurus. So you got, so what is Virgo, right? Virgo is a combination of Mercury and Earth. So if you got the moon in a Mercury sign with Saturn, which is very Virgo-ish in terms of it being slow and careful, and you have an Earth sign rising, or let's say you have the moon in Taurus with Saturn, then you're going to be getting the same thing, the same end result that you would get. So one important thing to understand with astrology is there's different ways to skin a cat, although we don't want to skin any cats. But in other words, there's more than one road that leads to Rome, although men not want to go to Rome with the coronavirus outbreak. But you know what I'm saying? There's more than one way to get a result. You can catch cancer in more than one way. You can get cancer in more than one way. It's not just by smoking cigarettes. You can get in other ways. So what you actually are vibing with or resonating with is the end result interpretation of the thing. Not necessarily that you actually vibe with Virgo, but you vibe with the stuff that Virgo is about. And there's other ways to get those same results. You following me so far? Let me check the chat to see if you guys are on the page with this. Is this making sense to you? I don't have my glasses with me, so. Just let me know if my examples are making sense to you. My basic thing is, the basic question is, why do I resonate with something that's not in my chart? For example, my sun sign is Leo, but I feel like a Virgo, or I feel like a Cancer. And so since I feel like a Cancer, that means that I think sidereal is more accurate, because sidereally my sun sign is Cancer. Or because I feel like Virgo, I think that means that 13 sign unequal constellation zodiac is more accurate. But the real answer to the reason why you resonate with something that's not in your chart is because you don't really realize what's in your chart. And so the simple example was, you think you're a Virgo, but you're actually a Leo because you're born in the end of July. But you know what? You have Virgo rising and you didn't even know it. Okay? You understand all this so far? I got a couple of yeses. All I want really is your yeses or your no's, because I want you guys to just learn how to follow along with the idea that I'm trying to present. Because even if I answer your questions, if you haven't learned how to follow along with the idea I present, you're not going to follow along with my answer. So, so the point is, you cannot validate a system of astrology based on what resonates with you. Now, I also want to take this to a very interesting thing, because, recently I've been doing the new moon readings, the lunar cycle readings, right? With the Tarabala from the Nakshatras of this planet to that planet, right? And it's really, really interesting. And I realized something yesterday or the day before yesterday doing these readings that made me want to do this live session today about how this principle works with Nakshatras. Like people will say, wow, I really resonate with, like, I don't know, Rohini Nakshatra, but I don't have anything in Rohini. And then somebody comes along and says, well, you do have something in Rohini, because let's calculate the nakshatras differently. And see, now, if we calculate the nakshatras differently, then you do have something in Rohini. And then the person will be like, yeah, I love this system. This system makes way more sense. Or somebody will come along and say, hey, did you know that there's nakshatras in the Navamsha? And so every planet that you've got has got 2 nakshatras. And look in there in the Navamsha. See, there's your Rohini. And somebody will be like, see, this is a great idea. This guy knows what he's talking about, because this is the only guy who figured out how I have Rohini in my chart. And I know I must have Rohini in my chart because I feel like Rohini. But you see, you don't need to go inventing all kinds of new stuff or modifying all kinds of basic things to figure out why you resonate with Rohini, even though you supposedly don't have Rohini in your chart. So here's the reason, and it's very interesting the way it works with nakshatras. This is really what I want to communicate to you today. It's this cool thing about Tarabala. Now, just in case people don't know what Tarabala is, a really quick explanation of what Tarabala is. Bala means the potency or the strength. So any star, or Tara is like a synonym for nakshatra, because nakshatras are stars. So any Tara has a particular Bala towards another Tara. So in other words, every nakshatra has a particular potency towards any other nakshatra. So for example, Rohini has a particular Bala or potency towards Kritika, and Mrigashirsha has a different potency towards Kritika. And Rohini has a particular potency towards Kritika and a different potency to Mrigashirsha. So this is what I mean. Tarabala means every star has a particular potency in interacting with another star. And that's the basis on which I've been doing most of my readings for the past 2 months. So it's very, very useful. And that what I've been doing, what I'm offering at the beginning of every month is this reading where you take the new moon's nakshatra and you see how that relates to the nakshatras in your birth chart. The nakshatra is occupied by the planets in your birth chart. So as I've been doing those readings, I noticed a couple of interesting things. Some people, okay, first of all, what's interesting is who comes to get the reading. Usually people come to get the reading whether they know it or not. Usually they know it, but sometimes they don't, because they have something significant in that nakshatra that the new moon is in. But there's some people, maybe 30% or 40%, that don't have anything in that nakshatra, but they still were compelled to get the reading. Because something about the topic of the new moon nakshatra really resonates with them. So in other words, like for example, this month it's Satabhishak. So something about Satabhishak is really resonating with these people who came to get a reading about Satabhishak, even though they don't have Satabhishak active in their chart. Now, what I realized is, wow, it's very interesting. Some of these people have, now Tarabala can be broken down into 2 categories of Bala, 2 categories of potency, positive or negative. So for example, there's 9 Tarabalas. Janma is the first, then there's Sampad Vipad, and then there's Pratyak, and then there's Chema Pratyak, Sadhan Naidan, Mitra, Atimitra. So there's like 4 groups plus the Janma, and each one is positive, negative. Janma is negative or difficult, Sampad or enrichment is positive, Vipad or detraction is negative. Like that, Kshema, protection, is positive. Pratyarka or attack is negative. Sadhana or advancement is positive, and Nidana or setback is negative, etc. So you can broadly categorize any Tarabala as either positive or negative. And then it has a specific type of positivity or negativity. Well, what I found is people that don't necessarily have Shatabishak in their chart really have an important relationship to Shatabishak anyway, because the rest of their planets are in all positive Tarabalas to Shatabishak, or all negative Tarabalas to Shatabishak, with the exception of maybe one or two. So this is a really interesting thing about, remember my basic answer to the why do you resonate with things that are not in your chart is you don't understand your chart well enough. And then I gave this simple thing of a person that only knows their sun sign. But look at this. This is something way more complex. Like, we don't know our charts sufficiently or sophisticatedly enough to be able to say, this is, I don't know why I resonate with this when this is actually not in my chart, because it probably is in your chart in another way. Like, more sophisticated, you could have the same components that make Virgo, even though you don't literally have Virgo, some planet in Virgo, right? So you could have an earthy Mercury, like Mercury in an earth sign, Mercury in Capricorn. And then you pretty much got the same end result as having Sun in Virgo. So this is even more interesting because it's in this kind of arcane system of Tarabala, which isn't really popularly known too well, to illustrate this other subject, which is kind of arcane, which is Nakshatras, which is really only used in the Vedas, in Vedic astrology. But it brings the point home, like, wow, did you ever realize that if all of your planets have a consistent Tarabala to a particular nakshatra, then that nakshatra is going to be really significant to you, even though you don't have anything in it? That's the thing I wanted to bring up to the respected audience today. So what do you think? Is it cool? It's pretty interesting, right? So let's see. So, and really, the takeaway message is, wow, that's really cool. And wow, cool, Vic discovered some interesting thing. But, and the takeaway, maybe you can, if you know how Tarabala works, Tarabala is simple, you just count from one point. So you just count from one nakshatra. So let's say if you think, why do I resonate with Revati? I don't know. Right. I don't have Revati in my chart. But Revati seems like I really resonate with that. Like, I watched Vic's video about Revati and it's really touched me, and but I don't have anything in Revati. Why? We'll just count from Revati and figure out your Tarabalas to where your other planets are, and you'll see that they're either profoundly difficult to Revati or profoundly positive to Revati, or that your most prominent planet might be in a really significant Tarabala to Revati. Don't go ahead and say, okay, I need somebody to come along and explain to me how I really do have something in Revati. All right. Prakriti says, by this logic, everyone could associate and resonate with every nakshatra, isn't it? No, not really. You need to find out. Not everybody is going to have all positive Tarabalas in relation to a specific nakshatra. And you would need to know, you need to get familiar with Tarabala to be able to spot. I don't think I could even express it yet, but it's like the Tarabalas are positive, negative, basically every other one. Right? The first one is negative, the second one is positive, the third one is negative, the fourth one is positive, the fifth one is negative, the sixth one is positive, the seventh one is negative, and the eighth and ninth are positive. That's where the thing breaks. Only on the eighth and ninth. So basically, what you could do is, if you see planets have a one nakshatra space in between them, then that's one telltale signature that there's going to be some nakshatra that they're related to that is very positive in your life, even though you don't have something in it. So it's not at all like everybody's going to have this, but it's just one way to explain it. Another way to explain why you have Revati, like another way to explain, like what I'm saying also is what you really resonate with when you resonate with something is the interpretation of it, not the actual literal thing. I mean, nobody knows what it feels like for the moon to be in front of Revati. The moon is just an object. What we resonate with is not moon and Revati, but what moon and Revati means. So there's other ways to get what moon and Revati means. Maybe you have Venus in Cancer, in the 4th house or the 5th house, where you would really be getting a very similar interpretation to what Revati is. Maybe it's even like opposed to Saturn or something. So that's cool. Okay. Any questions there? Oh yeah. So what did I want you to take away from this? What I wanted you to take away from this was, honestly, what I really want you to take away from this is actually what this. I can't see, my eyes got a little bit weak, and this text is a little bit small. Takuji, I don't know. I can't read your first name. Aizen Takuji. What you just said is actually what I want you to understand. I find astrology very complex to understand. My head hurts with all the dichotomies. Please make it easy to understand for common people. No, guess what, my friend? It's not easy to understand for common people. That's why there's astrologers. And that's why not everybody on the block can become an astrologer. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that actually you don't know your chart, because it's way more complicated. And so you shouldn't be the one deciding whether or not the sidereal zodiac is more accurate than the tropical zodiac based on how it resonates with you, or whether or not some guy's idea of how to calculate the nakshatras, or some guy's idea of what planets to use, or what planets mean. It's not your call. It's over your head. You don't know astrology well enough. And so sometimes it's very easy to see like a real noob in astrology who just only knows their sun sign, and you can really smack them around and say, you dummy, you don't even know who your moon sign is. But that guy who's smacking around that astro noob can get smacked around by the next astro expert by saying, duh, you don't realize that aspect from Saturn to Mercury is going to create the same kind of effect that you get from the moon in Virgo. So what I'm saying is it always gets more and more complex, so you really cannot be the one to judge. And don't, you say, I want to be a Leo, or I want to be a this or that. Like, take my chart, right? My chart is Capricorn rising, Sun in Leo, Moon in Gemini. Why am I so freaking attracted to religion and philosophy? Look at this one. He says, beware of people who say it's complicated, too complicated for you to understand. They're usually trying to manipulate you. No, I'm just trying to tell you that it's too complicated for you to understand. I'm not trying to manipulate you at all. I can teach you how to understand it if you're patient and you take the time to understand it. But I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm just trying to tell you that if you're not a doctor, you shouldn't decide on what medicine you should take. So take a look at my chart. Like, I've got Capricorn rising, I got Sun in Leo, and I've got Moon in Gemini, but I'm like obsessed with religion and philosophy. So where does that come from? So I might think, I think my birth time should be a bit earlier and I should use a sidereal zodiac. Then I can get Sagittarius rising. And Sagittarius is very into philosophy and religion. Right? So if I'm monkeying with the basics of astrology and actually monkeying with my birth time just to get it to match what I think it should be because of my limited knowledge of how astrology works, okay, then that is not a great thing. If you just look at my chart for half a second, you just see, look, dude, you got, like, I can say, I don't even have anything in the 12th house. Well, you got the Lord of the 12th house in the 10th house all by himself. It's the planet Jupiter. It's the loudest planet in your chart. There's your answer. Right? So what I'm saying is the more you know astrology, actually, this is the interesting thing. Check this out. I say somehow I can't read these names because I'm not familiar with the shape of the words. Selene Lion. Selene Lion, check this out. What I'm actually saying is the more you know astrology, the simpler it becomes. And the more you don't know astrology, the more complex it is, and the more you're going to flail around in the ocean trying to get all these solutions. So the more you know astrology, you realize, you know what? This basic stuff with like 12 zodiac signs, 12 houses, whole sign house system, 7 planets, and that accounts for everything. That accounts for everything. This is cool. YouTube automatically withheld Celine Lyon's comment just because he or she used a bad word. So Celine Lyon is just trying to warn us about sophistry. But don't worry, I'm not talking sophistry. I'm not a sophist. This is an interesting question from Prakriti. I feel I'm awesome, but my chart says I'm somewhat awesome. Then how should I read it? Does it mean I'm actually less awesome? Or am I reading the chart wrong? I think you're pretty awesome. I don't know. The question is very vague. Like, let me think about that question. Yeah, that's a good question. So, for example, I think that I'm 6'3". Let's put it in a concrete term. I think I'm 6'3", but my chart says I should only be 6'2". So am I really not 6'3", or am I just not reading this chart right? So I would say this is where you can't do your own brain surgery. Thanks, Bert. This is where you can't do your own brain surgery. This is one of my favorite books. I posted this someplace. The cover of this book called How to Do Your Own Brain Surgery and Other Amazing Things, or Brain Surgery Self-Taught. And also in India, there's a principle that modern people don't like too much, is that you have to have a guru. And this is the reason why, because to reading your own chart, so you have to have an astrologer who you trust and believe in. And hopefully you trust and believe in that person for good reason, not just you rolled a dice and it came up on this person's number. But you use your intellect as far as possible to believe and trust that this person has a clear vision of reality and knows how to interpret these symbols. And then if they tell you you're a little bit less awesome than you think that you are, then you should start to think, I'm a little bit less awesome than I think that I am. But of course, we probably wouldn't tell you that you're less awesome than you think that you are. You get it? Bhavana Suresh, Steven says I get attracted to all the wrong gurus. See, that's another issue. So this is why you can't just roll a dice. This is the thing too, is you actually have to have Sukriti or fortune to be able to discern a good guide from a not a good guide. Komal wants me to say something about coronavirus. It's a very serious thing, but I think that it's kind of comical that I didn't see any, this isn't my thing really to like interpret mundane events, but I didn't make any prediction that there was going to be like a global outbreak, right? Or neither did any of these people that totally try to make predictions. So you also have to be realistic about your gurus. The guru is somebody who knows stuff much better than you do. But that doesn't mean that they know everything, and it doesn't mean that it's possible to know everything. But when you have trust that this person understands, what actually the feeling will be, I want to understand myself the way this person would understand me. That's the person you should get a reading from. Or I want to understand the world the way this person understands the world. That's the person you should study from. That's really that really should be the guiding light for who you choose as an astrologer or a guru or a guide. What's up, Fuzz? Hey, Leslie. So what else? You guys got any other questions? I'll give you another few minutes. Speaking about wrong things, what represents a particular body part? Well, it's pretty theoretically easy to say what represents a particular body part. But to do medical astrology efficiently and effectively, you should be a doctor. Right? Like I can tell, I feel comfortable doing readings where I help people be happy or productive or because I know about that stuff. But I wouldn't be comfortable doing readings telling people how to cure their cancer unless they tell me specifically. They know I'm not a doctor, but they want my opinion because I'm not a doctor. So in order to do astrology effectively, you have to know the astrology and the subject to which you're translating the astrology. Like if you want to know something about what kind of music you should play, it would be great to find an astrologer who knows a lot about music. If you want to do something about what kind of spirituality is most effective for you, it would be great to have an astrologer who knows a lot about spirituality, because you need not only the knowledge of the astrology but also of the subject that you're interpreting the astrology for. So when it comes to physical astrology with body parts and all that, the basics are very simple. You just take a picture, you just list these signs or houses in order from 1 to 12, Aries to Pisces, and you put the top of the head at the top and the feet at the bottom. And then you just have this zone is Aries or 1, this zone is Taurus or 2, this whole zone with the hands are held out and it crosses like this is Gemini, this whole zone is Cancer, this whole zone is Leo, then Virgo, then Scorpio, Libra, Sagittarius, all the way down. It goes like that. And then planets represent different organ systems in the body. Different planets represent different organ systems. But I'm not the guy to really teach you about medical astrology because I'm not a doctor. And also, I'm not the guy who really believes in somebody is going to predict to you that when you walk out the door on February 15th, a fly is going to hit you on the left side of your nose. That's not my. I don't. Not only do I think that that's way beyond the capability of human beings to interpret, but I also think it's absolutely useless information. So I don't really care if this side of the D3 represents the left side of my nose or the right side of my nose. But if you really are into that, you can find somebody that specializes in that kind of stuff. What else? What other questions you got? Yeah, Takori says astrology seems like a PhD level course, and of course it is. Astrology is the mother of all science and the mother of all religion. So this is the PhD study. It's just unfortunate that first astrology was demonized by the Catholic Christian uprising in like 20 centuries ago, and then by this rise of physical sciences, hard sciences, it was ridiculized by that, so that you don't actually have very many truly intelligent people working with it right now. So that's the only unfortunate thing. It's an amazing subject for the greatest minds, but most people don't know that. And so most great minds are not really attracted to study. Maybe that will change. I'm just answering what catches my eye. So next thing I see is Vic from Prakriti. Would you not place astrology in the art category because it involves symbols and reading interpreting? Is astrology a science or an art? It has two components to it. Actually, astrology classically in India has three components. One is called organic, one is called horic, and one is called nimitic. So to put that in English, one is called the calculation or astronomy, one is called the interpretation or astrology, and the other is called the nimitic, which is the most misunderstood, which means the occasional, which actually people don't realize, but it actually means how you pay attention to actual not physical, but actual realities that are right in front of your face. That also influences how astrology should be done. So if you break it into these three components, you can see that it has both a scientific component. Astrology has a scientific component. You have to understand the heavens and the positions of planets, how planets move. And you have to have your facts straight about what represents what and what doesn't represent what and why. That's the scientific part. This planet signifies this, this, and this, and this, and this. That's the scientific part. Then there's the interpretation of how all the symbols combine. That's the Horica part. And that's the art. But then the nimitic part is also a really big part of the art, which is the communication of the interpretation to the individual at a particular moment, where you pay attention to their facial expressions and body language and the things going on around them, and you adjust your presentation of your interpretation accordingly. So those are the three components. So I think it's both an art and a science. D. Diplo. If I remember correctly, once you mentioned Uttara Bhadrapada guys lose their first. I never said that. I hope I never said that. That sounds like something that you would hear from somebody that loves to say really specific things. What else we got? What about resonating with your nakshatra? That's the planet that's most influential in the chart. Definitely. I mean, that's not a question mark. The topic of this discussion was, why do I resonate with things that are not in my chart? So definitely, you're gonna like, my most prominent planet is in Chitra. Well, obviously, that's why I really resonate with Chitra. I hate false advertising. I love to get to the. I like true beauty. Because Chitra is my most prominent nakshatra. It doesn't have to be a moon nakshatra. But the interesting question was, I don't have anything in this. Let's say Revati. I don't have anything in Revati, but I really resonate with Revati. Why is that? So one thing I discovered was, it's probably because you have a lot of the same type of Tarabala in relation to Revati from the rest of the planets. And so from that, I just extrapolated the general answer to the question was, the reason why you resonate with things in your chart is that you don't realize how these things are in your chart in less obvious ways. What else we got here? I like you guys. It's nice to talk to you guys after a long time. Prakriti is giving us some nice feedback today. She says astrology is just like human life. Some aspects are scientific and logical, and some parts are artistic. Yeah. I mean, the human brain has a left and a right side, right? So you have to bring them both to bear to be able to do astrology effectively, to do anything effectively. All right. Well, actually, Fuzz, you brought up an interesting point. People feel resonance with what they want to be, but I believe you should see that in the chart as well. You can see what a person aspires for as well as what they really are. But that's a nice point. People might not even know what another. This is so you brought up something that could be said to close the session is why do you resonate with things that aren't in your chart? A, because you don't really know what's even in your chart, and B, because you don't even really know who you are. So I think it's over bravado to say, no, I definitely know who I am, and I definitely am not a Leo. I'm totally a Cancer. And so therefore this system of astrology is superior to that system of astrology because this system describes me as Cancer. But guess what, guys? Back in the day when we were handling this tropical and sidereal stuff, like every day, that's all you guys were doing. Not all of you, but that's all 80% of the public was responding to this tropical versus sidereal thing. Was, well, it resonates with me, whether it's tropical or sidereal. Anyway, I love to pinch you guys and give you a little teacherly smacks. That's kind of my gift to you. Hopefully you enjoy it. Feel free to do the same to me if you see it, but realize that it has to be accurate for me to accept it. So anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day here. I really enjoyed having this time with you guys again. We can do it more often. It's just like when I get inspired, like this is something I should share with these guys. Then I'll do this. Like I really felt doing these readings, these new moon readings. There's a lot of readings. Like I'm doing like 5 readings a day now. So you're looking at a lot of charts. You get to do a lot of research at the same time. So when I stumbled on this phenomenon that most people getting these readings have something in the nakshatra of the new moon, and those who don't have a lot of the same type of Tarabala related to this nakshatra, then I realized this is something I want to share. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great time. Keep safe.